Hello and once again and very good evening to you. If you've just joined us, you're listening to Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio and the Traveller has returned.
Yes, the only thing I can say is hoots the new. I can now speak Glaswegian. I had a great time in Glasgow. It was lovely to get over to see the grandchildren. And do you know what I was asking my son-in-law about an actor called Ricky Fulton. Do you remember Francie and Josie?
Very well. Yeah, Francie and Josie. And you can't shove your granny off a bus.
Was that their song?
That was their song.
Oh, they were very, very funny. I remember them. I think they must have been on UTV in the early 60s or the
Would have been,
60s.
yes. Uh-huh.
You know, but apparently they were stalwarts of the Glaswegian comedy scene.
Yeah.
And they dressed like two kind of teddy boys or mods with the sharp suits.
Right.
You know.
And what about your family tree? Did you knock any doors?
I'm afraid not. I did.
They didn't answer. I'll tell the truth, they didn't answer. Eh?
To use the parlance of County Tyrone, it bucketed.
Oh,
I had one good day. We went over by ferry and my daughter drove us up from Carnryan to Glasgow, and that's lovely. You know, when this whole thing is over, I am going to go to the Highlands of Scotland. I am going to go to visit the Highlands of Scotland, you know.
Right.
And I can't wait.
Right.
But we'll bide our time.
Will you take a little camper van or something and go around, or will you sort of knock doors again?
No. I think I can see myself in a Volkswagen camper van circa 1973. And there, maybe a two-tone one. And I can go around all the little quirky little towns. So,
I could see you at the side of the road, thumbing a lift with a flat wheel.
Saying, hoots the new to all and sundry.
Oh no. Anyway, in your absence, Mr. Ford,
Yes?
I went around and had a chat with the great Mr. Bob Lingwood.
Yes, I
Remember
met Bob once. He is a remarkable man.
What a man.
What a life.
What a life he's had. And I'll tell you what, when you take a look at him and spend an hour or two in his company, as I did last week, it lets you see that age is really nothing but a number. That guy is, he's over 100. Not sure how much over 100 is. It's not our business. But he works in his garage, Declan. Mm-hmm. Now, he's some trouble walking because of a fall he had some time ago, so he's not just too well on his feet. But typical Bob, he got himself some sort of a wheelchair or wheel-assisted contraption.
Right.
But Bob rebuilt it to suit himself and his own needs.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Brilliant.
That is brilliant.
You know, absolutely no loss in hearing, sight, memory, everything. Banter, remembers great, everything from his earliest days. Born in 1918.
My goodness. And he's born in England, from what I recollect.
Suffolk, I believe, maybe, or maybe London. I'm not sure, yeah.
And I think the family business was in shoemaking.
I believe his father made shoes for ballet dancers.
I remember him telling me that once.
Right.
And for stars of the music hall and the musical theatre.
Yes.
You know, and and quite intricate shoes, you know, for ballet dancers and also then shoes for comedic effect, you know.
Yes.
And I remember he talked at length with me about his early days. And then I think he subsequently, at the outbreak of war, I think he joined up.
I think he may be in the Territorial Army. I think he maybe said that in the interview as well. Mm-hmm. And then had to enlist, obviously, with that. Seen action in France, in fact. Almost got himself shot in France because they were taking capture. But Bob says that some things in life you have to make very quick decisions. And that was one. I think he lived to tell the tale.
My goodness.
So, but he was telling me his very first time to visit this part of the world was July the 11th, 1940, when he was stationed in Lisburn.
80 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Lord save us. It's a long time ago.
Things have changed a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
But he met and married his future bride there. She was called Emma, and sadly has passed away. Mm-hmm. But he was telling me that in those days, families were all, the army soldiers were all taken out for Sunday for their tea and made very welcome. And I think his wife was the eldest of maybe 5 children. Mm-hmm. And obviously fell in love, and then he eventually got the courage up to ask his father-in-law for her hand in marriage. And he says, well, you know, we are practicing Roman Catholic, so you must convert. He was Church of England, which he did do. And Bob is very much a member of the Catholic Church here in Omagh, but is also a great member of the Churches Forum. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the Churches Forum is a cross-community forum.
Right, of local clergy.
Of the local clergy, yes.
Good.
And I suppose he's also a member of the Probus Club as well. And a beautiful garden, Declan. You want to see the man's garden. It's credit to him, it really is. Beautiful flowers and stuff. And anybody who knew Bob Lingwood early every morning for years on end, you'd have seen Bob prancing up and down the road. 75, 80 years of age, maybe more. And never took breath, and that's the way he is today. He's still that youthfulness
There's
about
a
it.
little lesson there for us all.
There really is.
Take care of yourself. And
Yes.
and pay dividends.
Yes. But I was asking about the shoe factory. The Tyrone Shoe Factory was one of the major employers in Omagh for years. That would have been a Ledu-backed factory. In those years, the government built what they call advanced factories. They built factories and then went looking for tenants. But Bob was a manager in a factory in London, and he was telling me sort of off mic that, in those days I think it was lovely. He would have went to England and over dinner with some of these family names of these shoe brands and would have discussed the price of the shoes over dinner. A handshake.
Sealed the deal.
And we're knocking out 8,000 pair of shoes a week. I know,
That is incredible.
isn't it? All on your name and your reputation.
Right.
But I worked in the shoe factory. I would have worked there after I left school. Bob gave me my first job there. And I wanted to leave school because I wanted to buy a Honda motorbike.
Right.
And nothing would do me like get this Honda motorbike. And the Tyrone Shoe Factory was one of the better paying jobs at the time. You didn't have to serve your time.
Were you in a managerial position?
Well, I don't think so. Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I was cut out for managers and factories. But anyway, I got my Honda. That's all I cared about.
Well, that was it. That's the
And I bought it off Nelson Allen in Castle Street. And I
Right.
paid it at £5 a month.
Well, have you paid it off yet?
Well, the interest is still going on if I haven't. Then I bought a Volkswagen. At 16, I was 16, Dick, and I bought a car at
My
16.
goodness.
And drove a car at 16, I hate to tell you, without a
Have
licence.
you a license?
No, you don't get a licence till you're 17.
Oh, I see. Right.
But when you have brothers older than you who look like you,
You could pass yourself
it
off.
had those odd advantages, right? But, you imagine that factory did give great employment at a time when there wasn't a lot of work about here. And you think Bob's wages would have paid a lot of mortgages and bought a lot of cars and stuff for
Yes.
people at a time when it was needed.
And when you think of it, that there were a number of factories in Omagh. We were just actually, before we did the programme, trying to think of some of them. There was the shirt factory.
Yeah, the shirt factory that later sort of morphed into Desmond's, you see. Yeah, you had that. Then you would have, of course, Nestle's was a big employer in town as well. And Kirkland's, they were in the Dairy Road. They made sewing machines or parts for sewing machines.
Right.
But in those days, you see, you could have had a trade. You could have went to college free of charge, or you could have got a job in a factory or whatever. So you had plenty of choice.
The late Ronnie Drew used to say, he says, you can spend a fortune, but you can't spend a trade. There's a great truth in that.
It really is hard enough now, yeah. But Bob was saying, was like everything the sign of the times, I suppose, in those days when there were few families owned those factories, and then like anything, when those shares were sold out and new people took over, it was all costed. And then they could source stuff cheaper in foreign places. So unfortunately, it ran out of.
As happened, for example, at the Herdman's Mills in Sion, the same there.
Yes.
As it can be produced a lot cheaper elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Business really has
Yes.
it can be quite cold and
Yes.
heartless. And
Yes, I know. But people like Bob Lingwood, not only did he know the price of things, he knew the value of things
Yes.
as well. He knew the value of keeping people employed.
Yeah.
And he picked a very young workforce as well. To make shoes in a factory in Omagh, he brought over maybe his wife and some close family friends, and they trained up. There was no HR right at that time. And those days, Bob was very particular, because there was no flags or emblems allowed in the factory. There wouldn't have been no legislation at that time for that. And he's seen that in other factories, and he made sure in his watch in Omagh that it was going to be a very safe, comfortable environment for all his employees.
Yeah.
So he's well ahead of his time,
Oh,
Bob
he was indeed now, and a very, very good employer.
Yeah.
So I look forward to hearing that. Yeah, it was years ago now I was chatting to Bob, but it'll resurrect a lot of memories.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it will resurrect a lot of memories for folk out there.
Hopefully it will, because some photographs to go with it as well of that. But for those who don't know where that factory is, it's beside or adjacent to where the health centre was, between that and Scott's Mills.
Oh, yes.
And, when you think Bob came over with basic staff and sourced all that machinery and got it in, got it all working and got got sewing machines over and got people trained to make shoes, and they made very high fashion shoes. It was all ladies' shoes for, I'm talking household name, mail order catalogues and things.
Right. Just high end,
high fashion, and he said it all worked. And we had a good workforce, because he said it was difficult just getting everybody on time in the morning, because one more time people don't like to start at 8 o'clock. Like to start at 10 past or quarter past or whatever the hours were. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, I had a great time there when I was there. I didn't stay too long, but I must say it was the very first job I had. You always remember your very first job and your first boss. But he was lovely to work with, and so were all the staff there as well. So without further ado, we'll spend the next hour in the company of Bob Lingwood.
Excellent.
Take care.
Well, I'll tell you when I started. First of all, I had a great, I had a brother, 15 months younger than I. We were like twins. We went through primary school in Chelsea. Finished up at 14 with no qualifications. And the headmaster, who then must have been miles before his time, interviewed parents of children that were leaving. And he said, started asking questions, and he said, well, what's his father do? And she said, shoe repairer. So he said, why not let Robert go to college for shoemaking? And that was arranged, and that was really a turning point, because the college was called Buenos, which is Spanish for shoemaker. It was right in the middle of London, Smithfield Market. It was an old primary school that was turned into the college. We had every machine that's used in the industry, and we learnt shoemaking right from measuring the foot right to foot. And I really worked hard. This was when I started realising, and I finished up after 2 years there as top scholar and captain of the school, which that was great. And then my first job was only the first job I got was with a shoemaker in the West End of London, an Irishman from the Republic. And every holiday, him and his brother used to go home for the holiday. And this particular Easter, I went and reported for work, and I sat on the set waiting for him to come. He never turned up, and he never came back. So that was the finish of the first job. And then I got a job in a company making theatrical footwear, Frederick Freed. And in a small company, he was a man that himself had been a ballet shoemaker, and he started up with his wife with a business, Frederick Freed, right in the middle of the West End of London. And because I could work all the machines, and I was very, very important at the age of 18, 19. And it was a great job, great people to work for. Jewish people are fantastic to work for, and they will look after you if you do your job. So I carried on there and very happy. And I had a bicycle. I was great keen on cycling, and every weekend we would cycle literally 100, 150 miles. And I was very fit, and I used to cycle to work every day, 10 miles into the centre of London. And that was everybody. It was great life. You would go to Speedway, go to all the sports, and then war came along, and I'd already joined the Territorial Army, not because I was patriotic. It was because I wanted to learn something about motor engines. Motor engines were like computers are today. Mystery. And I found I was in the Royal Signals. And okay, I had mates in it. It was a local unit, so we knew a lot about each other. And war came along, and I was called up immediately. And through various stages, I finished up in France, and was in France on my 21st birthday. Okay, for the first 6 months we didn't do very much. We dug trenches and we did exercises and we checked our equipment. And then one night I was on guard and I could hear hundreds of planes going over, searchlights, and so called out the guard and stuff. And the next day we moved on into Brussels. And again, we weren't there very long, 2 or 3 weeks, when the Germans pushed us out. We were no match for them. I mean, our equipment was almost last war. And on the retreat, I was in what we call a line unit. That was laying telephone lines and connecting up various parts of the army together. And I was one of the last. I was in charge of as Lance Corporal. I was in charge of a unit that was taken in lines before we retreated. And on the way back, I was driving this 3-ton lorry. I had 8 or 9 men in the back and a trailer on the back with poles in, so it was quite a hefty bit of equipment. And round in this bend, just in front of us, 100 metres, were these 2 German armoured vehicles who immediately opened fire on us. And I could hear the shells, they weren't bullets. I could hear them tearing the side of the lorry. My co-driver and myself, we jumped down quickly, didn't get hit, ran round the back, took cover under the lorry with the rest of the men, and they advanced slowly up towards us, firing the occasional burst. So I had to kind of surrender, and they took us prisoners and they marched us off, and our guard was a motorcyclist on a pillion with a machine gun. And we gradually, as we marched back, we picked up other prisoners, mainly French and Belgian soldiers, and we walked into a town called Alost, and I could see there was a river running through it. I could see a bridge that was blown up and laying in the water, and on the other side of the bridge, I think I detected British troops. Oh, I just went into mind. I didn't give it any thought. And then, as we marched further back into it's only a small town, there was confusion, and our guard was distracted, and he gave me his instructions in sign language to carry on marching up the road. So I thought, now there's things in your life. In later years you wonder, how on earth did I do that? And I said to my brothers, come on, let's make a run for it. And we ran back to the bridge. There was Belgian soldiers kind of trailing. Some of our boys couldn't swim. We pushed them pulled and pushed them onto the broken down bridge and clambered over. And on the way over, the Germans came back. And they opened fire again, and I could hear these shells of bullets hitting the iron girders, and no one was hit. And I got to the other side, and we were immediately confronted by a captain out of one of the guard units, a professional soldier, British. He started interviewing me, and at the end of the interview he said, well, I can't take your story as authentic. And I was, with my boys, we were placed in the guard room. And I think we were the only soldiers, many, that was taken prisoner by both sides the same day. Anyway, we were in the guard room for 2 or 3 days, and the captain came in one day and said, I want you to walk up the road 100 metres and come back. And he didn't tell me any reason why, so I did what I was told. And apparently there was one unit from my own unit was placed, and they recognised me, so I got the all clearance. So then it was journey back to Dunkirk, and we retreated every night about 15 miles, and eventually got to the outskirts of Dunkirk. But in the meantime, we were ordered to destroy all of our equipment. We put hammer through the engines, we cut the tyres, we did everything to make them and we just kept, I think, 2 or 3 vehicles to take the men back to Dunkirk. And I was one of the drivers, and fair enough, I was chaotic. It was everything on the road. We were dive bombed and machine gunned, and anyway, eventually we got to the outskirts of Dunkirk, and there were military police there waiting, and we were told to dismantle and to walk the rest of the way, because otherwise it had been complete chaos. But my officer who was sitting beside me, he explained to the red cap, the police, that we were a signals unit and we needed in Dunkirk, and we needed to get there quickly. So we were one of the few lorries that got through almost to the coast. And we got to the coast, and we were there 2 or 3 days, constantly being dive bombed. We dug in the sand, so that little dugouts and took our days. Our only food was corned beef and water and biscuits. And on the 3rd or 4th day, it was our turn to go out and get onto a ship. And the way we went out, we were on small crafts which held about 20 men, flat-bottom boats, and they went out to the bigger ships. Then you climbed the rope ladder and got onto the ship. And we went up to one ship, and the captain sent us away, said he was full up. We then went over to another one, and we were the second 20 on it, clambering up the rope ladder, 15 to 20 feet's no easy task. So we got on deck, a beautiful day. I think it was the 1st of June. Sun was shining, so we stripped all our clothes off. We were soaking wet, laid them out on the deck, and we hadn't been on the boat half an hour, and we got dive bombed, and we got 2 or 3 hits, and I got wounded. I got shrapnel in the back, and as the boat was sinking, a destroyer came alongside us and took off the 40 or 50 men, and we sailed back to Dover. And then I went up to hospital in Sunderland, and I was in there 3 or 4 weeks, and it wasn't long before I was a walking patient. Then I used to walk in the other wards, and I would see other people that I knew that were more badly in. And this corporal said to me, "Do you see this morning's paper?" I said, "No." And he threw it across, and right across, the soldiers awarded for bravery. And my nose, I couldn't believe it. We got the military medal for letting the boys away. So, and I later received it from King George V at Buckingham Palace. So that was quite an experience. Anyway, out of hospital, went back to the transit camp, and I was given leave, and I was supposed to report. That was a Catholic. I was supposed to report back there at the end of the leave. And while I was back in London, I heard my unit was reforming in Aldershot. So I went down to see them, and the adjutant said, "Look, at the end of your leave, don't go back to Catholic, come back to us," which I did. And on the same night, he said, "Don't bother to unpack, we're moving tonight." And we went from Aldershot up to Glasgow, from Glasgow across the channel, landed in Larne. So that was my first confronter, and that was on the 11th of July. They took us up to a camp in Lisbon. We were confined to camp that day. Next day, we could hear the bands and stuff going on. We hadn't got a clue. So the next day, we were allowed to leave the camp, and everybody rushed for a telephone. Now in those days, people in working class areas, one telephone was shared about 20 houses. Not like that as kids today, 6 years of age, got into all their camera stuff. Anyway, I managed to get hold of my father, and he said to me, where are you? I said, we're in Northern Ireland. Well, he said there was a police here today with the army looking for you. You've been posted as a deserter. That was because I had reported to Patrick. Now, in your long life, there are times when there's crossroads. You know, if you go in one way or the other way. If I'd have gone back to Catterick, I would never got to Northern Ireland. But chances are that I wouldn't have got. The chances are we got posted to the Far East. So that was a real change in life. So we got in the camp, and of course it wasn't long before we got integrated with the public and people. And you know, on a Sunday afternoon, our camp would have been empty. 600 men, all being invited out to tea. You know, different houses, and there was no. We didn't understand anything about the problems. And we ignored it. We didn't, we worked with them. We arranged dances. We arranged functions and stuff. And anyway, we were under canvas then, right until October and November. The place was a mud bath, and they moved us out into church halls and garages because the camp was being built for us in Lisbon, in this and that and so on. And it wasn't quite ready. So I got the job of clearing the camp. All the tents, I had to take them down. I had about 10, 12 men with me in a couple of lorries. I had to take them down, and we took them down to the local mill, which was Barber's. We washed them in the pits where they usually wash the flax, and we took them down to the mill to dry them, and in their drying rooms where they dried all the flax. Then rolled them up, sent them back to Belfast. So anyway, after a couple of days, this lady came to me and she said, when I finish serving all the people with their break, their coffee and their tea, you fetch your men down. And she gave us tea and scones with, lovely. Yeah. And this went on. And one day she came, she said, would you like to come down to tea on Sunday? So I said, fine. So 2 or 3 there, we went down to tea on Sunday. There were 5 girls, 3 boys, 2 maiden aunts, and the parents all in the one mill house. Right. And we got an invitation the following week and the following week. And then I started taking the oldest girl out. Of course, eventually we got married. So that was another kind of we got married, and then she came over to England on leave, and then we got notice. Oh, before we got married, you had to ask the parents in those days, and I approached her father, who was a gentleman. We got on great, and he said, oh no, nothing to do with me, you'll have to see her mother. So I saw Susan, her mother, different kettle of fish. Yes, we got no objection, yeah, that's fine, but there's 2 conditions. One is you get married in a Catholic church, and 2, you don't get married till the war's over. Now, I was Church of England. Yes. We had to go to Sunday school. We didn't get any religious training in school, so religion to us was right down the list. And so that didn't worry me one bit. And just to I don't know what made me do it, just a point of interest. I said to my future father-in-law, I would like to get interested. And he arranged for me to see a nun in a local convent, and I went there for a few weeks and learned Catholicism, and I converted then to the Catholic faith. And so that was another chapter in life. So anyway, it did come. We were issued with troubled kit, and we moved out the camp, and away we went. And we went down the Atlantic, round the Cape in Cape Town. we landed there. We had Scottish troops on the ship with us. There was over 1,000 men on the ship, and they went crazy. Just went crazy. But there were people there to meet us and took us out to tea and stuff.
Yeah.
Then eventually we boarded again, and we finished up in Basra. And soldiers' terms, I could say this on this, but it's not a nice club. It's the arsehole of the earth. Terrible place with the heat and the stuff. We actually had men dying on the ship before we landed with heat stroke. And the only way we kept their body temperature down was with watering cans pouring water over their naked bodies. And we eventually got ashore, and we were under canvas there for a bit. And then we went out from Basra to Baghdad, a virgin desert, so no roads, nothing. And it was you know, we got stuck and we got dug, we had to dig out and all that. And eventually we got to Baghdad. And then I saw 3.5 years service in the Middle East, in serving in at least 6 or 7 different countries, including Egypt and the 8th Army and so on. And during this period I got malaria, and it was the type that they couldn't cure. It would recur in your system. And I'd got this malaria 2 or 3 times, and I finished up. I was in hospital in Beirut, and that because of this week was a point. And it was a hospital that had been taken over by the military. We had military nurses who no doubt were efficient, but very, very strict. We had to be up in the mornings at the end of your bed, dressed, bread made, everything by 8 o'clock, whether you were dying or whatever. So anyway, came to a time when I got better, and they I heard the doctors and nurses were on the conference at my end of the bed, and I heard them saying this man should be repatriated, and then I heard them say, "We give him one more chance." But I got out of that hospital, and I knew that I could get malaria again if I pushed myself. Yeah. If I got my immune system down, it come back. She said, I tried everything. I jumped, I ran, I did everything possible to get malaria. Never got it again till I got home. I'd been home a month and I got malaria. But so anyway, I unfortunately, because I was downgraded in health, I couldn't rejoin my unit. You're not allowed to be in a fighting unit unless you're A1. Yeah. So that was a pity, because I'd been with them right the way through from Dunkirk all the way through. And I was then posted to an Indian armoured unit where it was British officers, NCOs and Indian other ranks. And again, lovely people. They worshipped the ground we worked on. Would do anything for us. So that was a little period, and that's where I kind of finished my service in the Far East, because we eventually one day, over small while as that peace had been declared, and that was that, and now it meant waiting for your turn to come home. So of course eventually got home. And I got my travel pass. We were demobbed in Aldershot, and it consisted of a suitcase made of cardboard, a suit, a change of underwear, socks, a hat of your choice, silver or cap or whatever. I can't remember how much money, and a travel pass. Well, Aldershot's only 20 miles from London, so I got my travel pass made out to Belfast. And my father-in-law had made arrangements. Petrol was, short stuff, but he got the local funeral and wedding undertaker to get a big car for the day, and all the family met me in Belfast. And as I got off the train, my wife never recognised me. I was white hair, you know, small and such. But anyway, came back and spent a couple of weeks there on leave and so on. Tried to get a job in Northern Ireland. There was a shoe factory in Banbridge, Lotus, but I couldn't get what I wanted. So we decided to go back home, which we did, and my wife, you know, obviously came. She, for the first few months, she was, you know, homesick, cried every night.
What do you call your wife? Was it Emma?
Emma.
Yeah. What year did you get married, Bob?
1942 in Lisbon, and got cracking, and then I joined the post office, and because I thought there wasn't much future in the shoe industry, joined the post office, but that I didn't work out because promotion is based on service, and my service was nil against a lot of the others. So I decided to go back in the shoe industry, and I went back to the company, the Valley Shoemakers, and by now Emma, who was a machinist, she was a skilled machinist. She came and worked with me in the same factory. We used to go out to work together on the bus, and I went back to evening classes and really started work again, and was doing quite well. And a friend of mine, a lifelong friend who I met at school, Wainers, came over. He lived within a mile of us. He came over one night and he said that factory he was working in, which was in the east end of London, was starting a new method of shoemaking, and they wanted somebody to take charge. Would I feel like the job? So I changed from the west end of London to the east end of London into ladies' fashion shoes, as against dance, like ballerinas, shoes and so on. Now that was a great experience. I went to all the theatres, Covent Garden, met all the ballerinas, and it was great job. But anyway, got on well again, and they gave me a team of young men and women, and we got this department going, and it went well. And the manager of that factory decided he was going to have a go on his own, and invited me to join him. And I, for some reason or other, I declined. And from there on, I'd already knew that I was going to work. So I would change jobs for less money if I thought I was getting more experience. So I went through about 3 or 4 factories, probably 2 years at a time. You know, went from an operator to a assistant foreman and a foreman, and eventually I got the dream job that I was looking for. There was an advertisement in the paper for a factory manager in the local press, and it was at the prime factory in London. We knew it was the best factory, making the best shoes, and I thought, I'm not ready for that yet, so I let it go. A month later, the same advertisement appeared, and I thought, Jesus, he didn't last long. And I knew the boy that got the job, so I phoned him up. I said, what happened? You didn't last long. Oh, it's nothing to do with my job. He said, they're going to start a new factory. They've got a brother coming home he was ex-army, and there's not room for him in the business. This was in Leytonstone in the east end of London. And they're going to give him all the help they can get, and they're looking for a factory manager. So I applied for it and went for the interview. About a week later, learned that I got the job, factory manager. How much a week? £25 a week. Factory manager. You know, I mean, that was the kind of scale of the wages then. I've still got the letter today. I keep archives. I've got all those kind of things I've got, and I've still got that original letter.
Yeah.
So anyway, I now had an empty factory, no people, no machines, nothing, just a factory. the boss hadn't a clue on shoemaking. He was an army officer. Turned out that he wasn't particularly clever with people. He would go and knock a boy in the china shop, and you'd have people with putting their coats on and walking out. But anyway, because I'd already I knew the best foreman, and I picked. Jesus, talk about Premiership football. I had the best team in London, and really that factory turned out to be the best factory in the UK. Without it, the Research Association did a research on it, and they measured it on the amount of shoes you were taking out per person, the weight, all the cotton, and our factory came out top. Brilliant. And they even measured it eventually against an American factory, and we came out well there. So anyway, that was great. And the boss there, I was the boss. There's no question. I mean, what I said went, and we were making lots of money. I could have what I want. I was travelling all over Europe, picking the best machines and so on. And it was a fantastic factory. So anyway, we were doing great. And we did everything we could at the factory to make more space. Eventually we said that we would have to get another factory. So we decided that we would stay based in London. The London factory would do all the selling, designing and so on. So we wanted another unit just to make shoes. And at that time the government would give offering factories in high unemployment areas to entice you to go, and Belfast and Northern Ireland was one of them. So I said to my co-directors, I said, we go to Northern Ireland. He said, what? I said, well, we'd get a factory in Northern Ireland. I said, the women, the labour there is fantastic, because my father-in-law, even though he was a Catholic, managed to get a good job in a mill in London, in Belfast, and he used to take me and I used to watch. So anyway, I thought I was crazy, but I got my own way. My brother and I came over, even the accountant, we came over to look at the site and so on. And I had two choices. We met Ledu and they offered us good conditions. We had two choices. One was in Belfast, just outside Belfast, and the other was Omagh. I wanted one in Lisbon, but it was unavailable. So anyway, we came out to Omagh, and we landed up in the town. I mean, we'd never seen anything like it. We went across to the town hall, which was in the high street then, and the girl went, asked what we wanted, and we told, and she went round to another office, and out came the chairman, 1968, round about that time. And they owned a cafe in the high street. Anyway, he took us all round. He offered us housing for anybody I brought over, and we started. And the factory wasn't quite ready, but we came over, and Scott's Mill offered us a room which was big enough to accommodate about 20 sewing machines, and we came over and we interviewed, and we decided the government asked us to employ as many male people as we could. So we decided that we would try men stitchers as well as ladies. Now this wasn't normal practice, and my daughter was involved, and we could train machinists those days in 2 months, whereas before it would have taken 2 years. You had special methods and so on. And we got going, it went well, and the men's stitchers were as good as the ladies. And eventually the big factory opened, and we got organised. And honestly, one of the things that we did, which again got from my father-in-law, was when he heard I was starting the factory, he said, on your application form, he said, don't ask religion, don't ask what school they went to. So that was a kind of advice. So I'd already been to that factory in Banbridge, which was now employing 1,000 people, and their stitching room on every machine was a Union Jack. There were Celtic football slogans all over the factory. And when we started, I said to all the boys and girls, I said, look, no emblems, no Union Jacks, no football teams, nothing. We're here to work. We're here to make shoes. That's all they wanted. Yeah. You wouldn't have known who was who. It was a fantastic factory. I had no problem. And that went on, and we did well. And of course, things got a bit tough with the invasion, as it were, cheap labour, shoes coming into the country. So that made us. We had to close. So we went from 1968 to 1975. We were employing 180 to 200 people. It was just a shame but that was that. But we had to make a decision. I was offered a job in New Zealand and another one in South Africa. So I could have got a job on the mainland. But we decided to stay for some reason. My brother and we set up a smaller company making specialised products for sport footwear and comfort footwear. And we kept that. We had eventually about 20 people, 20 plus, up on on Morris Taylor's site where there used to be a ATS camp during the war. And that went on, and we did it. We had mixed. The shoe industry was almost disappeared in the UK. I'd reached the age of 70, and Michael was in us. We were doing all right one year. We'd do all right. Next year was tough. So I said, I'm retired. You can carry on the business. We had, in the meantime, we had Denise and Michael. Both of them joined the factory. Anyway, I retired, and I'd only been retired a few weeks. I had a phone call, and it was from a friend in the industry. And he said, I heard you retired. And I said, yes. And he was working for Reebok. And he said, would you like to come and do some work for us? So I went over and interviewed, and I got this job with Reebok. And it was the most amazing. I was a consultant, and my job was where shoes had gone wrong or production was wrong, my job was to go out and sort it out.
Troubleshooter, as it were.
Eh?
A troubleshooter.
Yeah, and that took in my first exercise career, and it happened to be that same year as the Olympic Games were there, so lots of excitement, and that took me over a period of their salary was out of this world. They were paying me then £500 a week in the pocket, so I was, and over that period I worked for 5 years. I saved £30,000, and that really kind of give us enough to be comfortable in retirement.
Yes.
Not excessive, but So, so at the age of 75, I finally retired. And now, because my period in Omagh had been mainly confined to the factory, I had joined Rotary, but I couldn't keep it up because I couldn't you couldn't get to the meetings. So I really, I knew a few people, and I was out running one day, exercising, and I met Captain Roundtree, who was our solicitor for the factory, and he said what you were doing and so on. I said I was doing some decorating stuff at home. He said, do you think of joining Probus? So I'd never heard of Probus, and I went back and talked it over with Emma and decided to join Probus, which was great because this now gave me a kind of a entry where I got to know people.
Yeah.
And really that has been one of the joys of my retirement, because I hadn't been in it we used to meet at the Royal Arms then, and I hadn't been in it probably a couple of years, and the secretary was going to move up to chairman, so the secretary's job was vacant, and he said, made the answer that he was, as usual, you don't get any volunteers, and he looked over at me, and would you do it, Bob? Oh, I could never say no. So I took the job as secretary, and I did it for 6 years. And during that 6 years, one of the meetings, when they were renovating the town, the council put in place a man to oversee the whole thing, and he came and spoke to us. He was the man that came and spoke to us, Probus, and I said okay. He said they were forming a committee that was looking after the needs of disabled folk on access to premises and all the rest on the changeover. And would the club like to appoint a member? And as you know, no volunteers. So I said, look, I'll go for the first couple of meetings, see what it's like, and then I can see if we can arrange somebody permanently. Because that worked out that I was in it to this day, still in it. We still meet and we still do. We did some work up near the hospital and so on.
Yes.
But what that did, that led me from there to the Churches Forum, to Shop Mobility, to all the different charities that I work for, and I'm still doing it.
Good for you, Bob.
And we still meet regularly and so on. Still enjoying it.
Yes.
And I think for that work I got awarded the MBE, which was recently. So, I've had exceptionally good health. I've looked after myself. I've had one or two setbacks, obviously. Yes. This was really an accident, because I had a slight accident with the car in the town, and one of the Kellys, the chemist people, picked up Omagh and run me home here in his car. And as I went through, he saw something around her. I might have been in there, had a Chelsea picture up. He said, "So you're a Chelsea supporter?" So I said, "Yes." I said, "Come and see my Chelsea room." And you can have a look at it before you go.
Yeah, okay.
As I was walking into the bloody room, I tripped over a mat, and instead of falling forward, I fell sideways and cracked the hip joint, which I didn't know then, but that's what I couldn't move, so they got the ambulance and that. And because they said they couldn't do anything with it,
Yeah.
it had to be self-healing. And during that time, I was sitting in the chair beside the bed. All the knee muscles, leg muscles went.
Oh.
So that's. I was a bit disappointed there, because I felt that they
Yes.
could have given me some more exercise.
Some stimulation for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, I'm coping. I mean, I'm still.
Yeah.
I can still do 80%
Good.
of what. I can still work with tools. I still do a bit of gardening and stuff.
Yes.
So I'm.
Yes.
So that's roughly.
That's a good story, Bob. That's excellent. You're still interested in the garden as well. You've always been involved.
Well, I'm in the Garden Society. I've been chairperson of that, and we've run the garden competition several times.
Yes.
Local garden, and I love the garden's great.
Yes.
And there's still, as you can see, I'll get people to help me now.
Yes. Were you surprised how successful the factory was in Omagh at the time?
Didn't even think about it. I mean, at that time when you're kind of that age, you don't. Quite frankly,
Yes.
I would never look at the fear aspect.
Yes.
It was under the positive thing. we got taken up, you know. I mean, it never. If you turn the clock back 30 or 40 years, this factory would still have been going. I mean, shoe factories in the mainland were mostly owned by families, and there would be big families like Saxon. That was a family business. Freeman Ardent, all of them were family businesses, and what happened just after we got going, the factory in London that was, there was a man who was a millionaire, Jewish man named McClure, and he was buying old established companies. Examples was True Form, Freeman Ardent, very big companies, 300 or 400 shops, a shop in every town, right?
Yes.
And he was buying them at book value, and all these old family businesses had no training in accounting or bookkeeping, so he was buying the thing at rock bottom price. He would then sell all the shops and rent them back, and eventually he bought Freeman Ardent Willis. He got all of the big ones, but there were two major ones, elite. One was Saxon, and one was Freeman Ardent. Was the Skinners. Both owned by joint families. They used to meet with my bosses over the dinner table, do the dinner, and all the business was done there. No shoe, no costings. If you want 30 shillings for that shoe, you could have it. So that it was so we were getting away with murder. So anyway, eventually one of the old aunts in the Lynn Skinner sold some of her shares to Claw, which gave him control. So he then got Saxon and then the Skinners. And it was only a few weeks afterwards, I got a call over their PA equipment. Will Mr. Lingwood please report to Mr. John's office? So I went up, and there's these two guys, shoes all over his desk. And he introduced me. He said these are the two senior buyers from the British Shoe Corporation, and they have taken over Saxon, and then and they were our main customers. And then that one afternoon, we went from profit into loss. They looked at a shoe, and they said to the boss, "How much are we paying you for that?" And he'd look at the pay. "Oh, well, no," he said, "we can't afford that," and knocked the shilling off, or whatever.
Yes.
So in that afternoon, we virtually went from, so that changed the business altogether.
Sorry, Bob, did you design the shoes here in Omagh as well?
No, we did, eventually. Going back to, in more detail about it, I'll tell you what happened. When it was envisaged that one thing I didn't tell you, which was important. My boss used to give me a bonus at Christmas every year. And it would start off maybe a tea set or something like that. But then he started giving me preference shares, which didn't have a voting right, but gave you a dividend. And then one year, he gave me 1/10 of the equity. He gave me 1/10 of the company. Well, he used to, every lunchtime, he used to go over to the other factory, which was about 2 miles away, and have lunch with his brothers, and then come back, And he went over to lunch this day, and he told his brothers what he'd done. I said, "John, you never ever give away your company. Give him whatever you like, but don't give him the company." But he stood his ground, you see. So when we started the factory here, I said to John, "I'm going to start this factory for you over there. I want a bigger share in it." So I then he agreed, and so therefore the factory was going to be a branch of this major factory. And halfway through it, he got cold feet, and he pulled out of the deal, which left John and I, so we didn't have enough money to finance it, even though I now sold my shares back to him, which gave me a big amount of capital, and I managed to get hold of because there were two options now. My brother and I were to continue, or we would drop the thing and carry on as normal. So we decided, and we got so far, we decided to go on our own. So I had to find more cash, and I went round to one or two of, there was one Jewish man I went to, Zussman his name, and he had a shoe wholesaling business who we'd done business with, and he got interested and he became a shareholder. So this is how we eventually got the money so the shoe company that we here was now not part of the one in London. It was belonged to us.
Yes.
But we still had a close relationship. We would work with them, we would buy things with them. There was no bad feeling. So anyway, that was how that came about. And what started that? Where did we?
About designing your own shoes?
Oh yes. So therefore that meant that we, but in the meantime, I was always a great believer in like education and training, and all my staff would have been away on different courses. We'd have had young men and women going to Italy on designing, and I'd got a couple of youngsters that had gone right through this. So I said, would you like to join the new company? So we started off, they joined us, him and his wife, and they were our designers. So eventually the Tyrone Shoe Company was on its own, doing its own designers. So I appointed a factory manager who turned out to be great, and I concentrate on selling. And I would, go to the shops and mail order and all that. No problem. We were always busy. Never a shortage of to build our production up to 8,000 pairs a week.
Yes.
It was. Yeah. Well, with the we worked hard, we played hard, and it paid off. It was just this question that we couldn't compete with the big boys.
Yes.
And because although we were established, our roots weren't deep. We were vulnerable, whereas some of the older factories could
weather the storm better. Yes. Well, looking back, would you do it all again?
I started off telling a thing, and as you get older, you kind of, your mind goes back and you say, why on earth did I do that? There's two or three things that happened. One was, come on boys, let's make a run for it. It was absolutely, Germans all round us,
Crazy thing to do, was it?
And the other one was start the shoe factory.
Yes.
In a place, in a rural area. I'll give you an example. Some, you know the boys and girls there. We used to have someone turn up 9 o'clock and say, what are you talking about? We started working at 8 o'clock. They weren't used to discipline, what you had to do.
Yeah.
But because the main emphasis is on youth, but they were prepared for change, and they knew it, and that's what paid off.
Yes.
And really, as you knew, it was a fantastic unit.
It was a happy place.
Really a happy
place.
family.
Yeah.
It was.
And those 8,000 pair of shoes paid a lot of mortgages for people. For your, you think
start yourself.
Yes.
It started you off with that.
Yes.
Gave you confidence.
Yes.
If you went up for an interview,
yes,
you went up with a lot more confidence than you would have done if you hadn't have done.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
And as I say, I've still got several of the boys came, and I don't know if I told you at the beginning, but Dave Bright was still about.
You were
Dave
saying that,
Nardo and I told you that.
Yes.
Anyway.
And at the peak, you had 180 of a staff.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of wages.
Oh yeah.
Were you frightened at payday? Were you?
No, because we were making money. I mean, it was tough going. No, we what we did, you see, we went away from the British Shoe Corporation. I went round to Marrold houses. I went to other shoe companies that weren't affiliated. Everybody was looking for our shoes. There was a guy that used to come down from Derry every so often, and we would sell him a little lines. It wasn't. And when the girls in Derry knew that he was coming to Omagh, when he went back at 6 o'clock, there was a queue of 100 yards long of girls waiting for his shoes.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the shoes that we had platform stuff, but it was. Because another thing, I did a bit of teaching. I did when I came out. I did evening classes and stuff. Yeah. So I've always, and Emma was a great worker. She was a great manager. She helped her mother like with 8 kids. She was the oldest.
Wow.
So that was another good asset. And she when she first went to London, when we moved over, that was after the war. Obviously, there was nowhere. We couldn't get a flat, or we couldn't get a house. We couldn't get a bed. There was, it was talking about the epidemic. If you turn the clock back to the end of the World War II, we had a situation. London was off, bombed, and cities like that. Yeah. Belfast was even attacked. So, there was plenty of problems there, which were really overcome. It was so. To sum up, really and truly, I've had a fantastic life. I really enjoyed it, and I mean, I've made a fortune, but I've been comfortable.
Yes.
And.
But you made a lot of friends, which is probably more valuable.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I do it again. Probably in hindsight, you would do it better. You wouldn't make the same mistakes that you did. How can I put it? I don't regret any action that I've taken.
You see, we all make mistakes, but I think you can live with mistakes. But regrets, you can have more influence over you because you think you could have done something different.
Yeah,
I think we all make mistakes, but you have no regrets.
That's easy. I mean, that's the easy. It's easy to learn afterwards.
No.
And if you but that goes with everything.
It does indeed. Bob, you've talked to me just an hour.
Is that right?
Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh no, it's a pleasure.
It really is. Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you again after all these years.
When was the last time we met?
I would see at Mass occasionally. I would have waved to you, but I don't know if you knew who I was.
Kitty Clocker.
Yes, I go to Kitty.
Hasn't he done well?
Hasn't he done well? I've done a great job.
Yeah. Are you back?
Yes, I'm back here. I live in Omagh still. Yes.
Yeah, I know. But do you go to Mass?
Not now at the minute. Now, no, I can't go.
I went out yesterday for the first time since it started.
Yes.
I decided that Denise said I was supposed to be what they call it.
Self-isolating, no.
Yeah, but I said I wasn't. I had no letter. You had the letter, not me.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went out yesterday for the first time, I think, in 8-10 weeks ago.
Good for you.
First time I've driven a car.
Right.
And I wait for Denise outside Dunn's. They were going in and out. Everything seemed normal. There was baskets were full. There was no queues. The boy was washing the
trolleys. Yes.
It's like everything else. We will adapt. We will learn. We'll adapt. We take it into our stride.
Yes.
And we I mean, the years after World War II were the most exciting years because everybody was.
Yeah.
And I think our people have got great resilience, and we'll get over this.
As many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. but in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.